Welcome back for episode 206 of the Freight 360 podcast. If you are just joining us for one of your first episodes, we got a special one. We're going to talk with a gentleman today who's a great success story of Freight 360 content, how he went from $0 to almost 25 million in annual sales as a freight broker. But we'll get to that shortly. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast, on Apple or Spotify. Continue to share us with all your friends in the industry. Leave us comments, send us questions. We love to answer them on our the Final Mile segment, which comes out on every single Tuesday. And if you'd like to learn more about Freight 360's training, make sure to check out the Freight Broker Basics course for a full self-paced training on everything from how to start your brokerage, get new customers, hire, and grow that business. And just check out our website, freight360.net, for tons of additional free content. So this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Are you looking to quickly identify qualified sales leads? Looking to develop trusted, sustainable business partnerships? Well, look no further. The Lumber Blue Book is an online directory and credit resource for the lumber and forest products industry, covering mills, manufacturers, wholesalers, and retailers. Their database of over 23,000 lumber companies can be searched and segmented to develop sales and marketing campaigns. Members receive access to real-time credit and business information for companies throughout the industry. To learn more, go to lumberbluebook.com and click join today. That's lumberbluebook.com. Ben, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
And introducing for the first time on the Freight 360 podcast, Pardeep Singh, CEO and founder of T3RA Logistics. Pardeep, welcome to the show, man. How are you today?
I am doing wonderful from lovely California.
There you go. Sacramento, right?
Sacramento.
So, hey, for those who don't know you, and probably most folks don't, if you know, as an audience member and you've never been on the show before, just a quick down and dirty on who you are, kind of where you came from, and got into this crazy industry that we call a career. And we're excited to tell your story here later on as well.
Yeah, most certainly, Ben and Nate. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, both of you, and I'm honored to call you guys both friends. My name is Pardeep Singh. I'm like you said, CEO, servant CEO, I would say, of T3RA Logistics. I spent, I'll go a little bit as far back as when I was 17 and a half. I joined the Air Force active duty, did 4 years, and then reserves ever since then. I'm still in the Air Force Reserves. Got 2 more to hit my 20. And then, but been a technologist for a long time. I was in IT and more of account manager, where I learned the sales component, learned the technology. But what got me into freight, I invested into a company back in 2018. That was a app-based, startup that was logistics, and they gave me a board seat. At that time, I didn't. If you told me what, I asked them, I think within the first 2 meetings or so, I said, "Well, what's Lane? What is this thing called Lane?" That tells you back in 2018, I didn't even know what that was. So long story short, that startup made me realize how lucrative logistics is. And I really realized anything we wear, anything we touch, anything we pick up on shelves is brought by a truck or a train, right? So long story short, here we're doing well over 25 million. But it's accumulation of a team and sales knowledge, and you guys have been a critical piece of our success story, and that's why I'm sitting in front of you today.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we're gonna peel back the layers. I'm super excited for it because it's been a long journey, and to this day we continue to work together, and love to watch folks flourish. Your story is a special one. So, well, without further ado, our weekly sports update. Ben, unfortunately, I had my Buffalo Bills embarrassed by your Pittsburgh Steelers Saturday night. I don't even know what to say. So you live in Florida. You can't get covered to that game, I assume?
No, it wasn't televised. I watched the play-by-play, basically refreshing just the websites to just see with the play-by-play. I was reading it and talking to my dad, who was kind of giving me the highlights as they were playing out. So I kind of was as involved as I could be that, but I didn't actually get to watch it.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, there was a silver lining towards the end of the game, I guess. But like, for anyone that didn't get a chance to see the highlights, again, it's preseason. People say it doesn't matter, but when the Bills and the Steelers had their starting lineups out there in the first quarter, you're emulating a real regular season game at that point. And the Bills were down 21-0 going into halftime. Josh Allen didn't get a single touchdown, or we didn't even get a field goal when he was playing there, and our defense was just letting the Steelers run the ball down the field, get big kickoff returns and punt returns, and it was just tough. So the silver lining, the Bills did score 12 points in the fourth quarter, and I got to play the Bills shout song once in my basement, or twice, I guess, to see something. And we know where the weaknesses are, and at least they didn't get totally shut out. So that's
I would
all I'll say
say
about
too,
that game.
I
But
would add too that the stats I was watching again, because I was reading most of the game, like they were pretty even outside of the score, like possession, yardages. Like it wasn't really lopsided when you looked at the breakdown of just like how the game played out after the fact.
yeah,
Um, and again, it seemed like they're based on talking to you, it seemed like they were more like mistakes that ended up with big scoring opportunities. And that
yeah, it
was like a
was.
lopsided
The Bills had
game.
12 penalties in the first half alone. And so that's literally when Josh Allen's out there, he had some nice receptions or some nice completed passes. And then he had a real nice bomb that got called back because of a stupid penalty. And then Matt Barkley goes in as our second string quarterback and has 4 turnovers. And they, three, if not 4 of them turned into scoring plays. So it was literally the Bills offense didn't look bad. It was costly mistakes on penalties and just well, I guess the offense did look bad when you look at the turnovers, but it wasn't Josh Allen. It was Matt
Yeah.
Barkley. But hey, it is what it is. So we'll see what they can learn from that game and take into the final week of preseason this weekend. And the other thing on sports is so I'm a Boston Red Sox fan for baseball, but being from New York, there's a lot of Yankees fans, obviously. And the Yankees currently, as of Wednesday, August 23rd, are on their longest losing streak in over 40 years, and they're 9 straight losses. So it's pretty bad for the Yankees. And hey, I've been, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, name the sport, right? If your team's just in a slump, it is tough. And you just want that one quick slump buster win to get out of that funk. And they just can't seem to find it right now. But the AL East is a tough division in baseball for sure. Well, even Pittsburgh, man. I remember I had a buddy in college who was a Pirates fan, and he would remind me, he's like, man, we've gone almost 20 years without a winning season. And I'm
Winning
like,
season.
that's tough. That's pretty much his whole life because he was like 19 or 20 at the time.
Since Bob Nutting bought the Pirates, they've basically, I don't know that they've had a winning season since he's purchased the organization. They built PNC Park, great ballpark, great place to watch games, but they spend money and talent, and as soon as they develop it, they trade it away and bring in somebody new to give you a little bit of
They've at
hope.
least definitely had some winning seasons, but they haven't won a championship, obviously, since then. But
or a pennant or anything of the like.
Pardeep, are you a sports guy at all?
NASCAR.
Okay.
I would say that's more anything to do with adrenaline junkie.
Okay.
If I could turn the camera over, I raced motorcycles professionally. So
nice. What'd you race? What model? What'd you race?
I raced SV650, raced some Ducatis, so mostly road racing. And I would say I was never, the top 5 competitive because I didn't have any dirt experience. A lot of the guys coming into that racing world, the guys that were making the top, right? The top, ANA, AFM, and Moto America they grew up around dirt racing. So, and once you have family and then you realize, and you've also been lifted with helicopter twice, you kind of realize, okay, I think I'm getting into my late 20s and maybe I need to find something else, right?
Yeah.
But now, you won't catch me on 2 wheels anytime soon. I did have a motorcycle in our previous office, and it was a show bike. And I think I'll probably collect another motorcycle soon and kind of park it right here.
There you go.
Little nostalgia.
Love it.
They're good to look at now. That's about it.
So on a shifting gears to news, in the last week, social media has kind of been blown up with reports of, obviously we've been seeing fraud for over a year now, but some of the big companies getting targeted. And even the company I work for, T3RA Logistics, we got targeted like half a dozen times in the last couple of weeks where there were loads being posted on the load boards that looked like they were from us, but it didn't have our email domain. It, nothing matched up. And then we're seeing we're getting carriers calling us and emailing us like, hey, is this rate confirmation legit? There was doctored rate cons. So we got with the load board companies and they quickly took care of that part and had to just advise a lot of our core carriers that, hey, these are not, this is not us. Make sure you check our domain. And there was a lot of other larger freight brokerage companies out there as well that were that were subject to that. So, Pardeep, have you guys had
Yeah,
that? Having
yeah.
that?
We had a couple. We had DAT that was, we had our company loads posted on DAT, so we had to call DAT, and they had some kind of a timer that had
Yeah.
to take place before they could kick them off, etc. Yeah, so we were definitely the victim of that as well too. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And the last thing, it's hurricane season is here, and obviously you hope not to see destruction and devastation from natural disasters, but unfortunately, it's a part of and it's an annual cycle. It's going to happen, right? So there are opportunities in transportation and freight brokerage whenever this kind of stuff happens, right? So if there is, an area where they just have to shut down for a few days or there's damage, right? It's going to disrupt the flow of goods and supplies in that area. So whether you're looking at getting freight out of there before it's supposed to hit or getting trucks in there after it clears, or maybe you're in the FEMA realm and you want to work on some of that freight or some of those loads that help to send supplies and goods after the fact. It is August and it is hurricane season now. We had hurricane just hit Southern California, I think, in the last week. So
Yeah, fire as well too, Nate. Fire is also taken off quite a bit in California, and we are helping out with that as well too.
gotcha.
Taking freight over for the firefighters, etc.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, obviously terrible circumstances, but it's
Yeah,
the reality of the world we live in every single year. So,
100%.
well, Ben, let's give a shout out to DAT, and we'll hop into Pardeep's story.
Tired of struggling to find accurate rates and the right carriers for your freight? With DAT1, you can access more than 500 million posted loads and trucks every year. That's 3 times more capacity than any other load board. Plus, their integrated freight management system makes it easy to cover loads 24/7. They have the most trusted network of carriers, brokers, and shippers in the industry. You'll get real-time rates on every lane so you know exactly how much a shipment will cost before you commit to it. Plus, you get instant access to top bids from qualified carriers around the country. Take advantage of a free month of DAT1 when you visit the link in the show notes.
Yeah, and we actually, just to give people a little peek behind the scenes, we just switched our podcast hosting site from SoundCloud to Buzzsprout. And the good thing here is, what I have noticed is that SoundCloud didn't do a good job at having our links for like affiliates or recommended products or the website. It was really hard you couldn't even click on them. You had to just like try to copy and paste or manually go to our website. We tested it out this week. Buzzsprout is working good. So if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever, it's on iHeartRadio now. There's a whole bunch of them. You can just super easily go down to that show notes or the episode notes, and you'll be able to just click right on recommended products.
Can you upload the video files to Buzzsprout? I haven't been in it yet because I know you've done this in the past couple of days.
We'll have to figure that out one step at a time. It's like riding a bike, right? I got the training wheels on Buzzsprout right now. Maybe I'll take them off, and next thing you know, I'll be whipping around in a Ducati like Pardeep.
Yeah.
So Pardeep, let's get to you, man. I'm super excited.
Right.
So first of all, thanks for your service. I always love to talk with other folks that are military background, and even you're still today serving. And you mentioned you got 2 more years to get that 20. Folks don't know what that means. 20 eligible years of service makes you eligible to retire with a pension from the Department of Defense. So congrats on a long career. It looks like you're coming up towards the freedom at the end. But take us through. I want to start with T3RA, veteran owned. It's a big focus on your company. What does T3R stand for? How did you come up with the concept of a veteran owned, and a lot of veteran employees there too? But how did that all come together?
Yeah, so first of all, T3RA is numerical number 13 in the language of Punjabi. And so my business partner, Amandeep, who actually is he's very knowledgeable about logistics. He's been a carrier. Been a truck driver. He's been an owner operator. He's been in the industry for a lot longer than I have, right? I think well over 20 years. And the number 13 represents, generally when you say number 13 in Punjabi, that means 13. So T3RA, the 3 is really E. We just figure out a way to spell the 3. And the number 13 represents the dude upstairs, right? If you're a religious, God, Almighty, however you want to do it, universe.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, basically what we're saying is that this company is really yours. And we're just the puppets. So it's a very deep meaning. And then for me, what it represents is that we're just pay, and it serves both ways, right? It allows us to serve our customers. And for me, it's a big component. It allows us to serve the veterans. So because once you're spent close to 20 years in the military, DOD, the veterans are very close to me. I wouldn't be sitting in front of you if it wasn't for the Air Force, right? So it's only fair that you pay it forward. And the number 13 also works along with that. That is yours, and we're here just helping out and empowering veterans.
That's awesome. And I think it's a good mindset to have, whether you're in brokerage or any other company. As a leader, it's really stewardship. And you mentioned like what do you call it, a servitude CEO, or it's
Servant leader or
servant,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
servant
servant
CEO,
leader.
right? Where you're not there to have people work for you. You're there to provide. You're there to work for them, essentially, right?
100%.
Obviously, it comes down to it. They are an employee of yours, and they do work for the company. But it's important to have a good stewardship and leadership mentality when it comes to running any organization, because there's a lot of bad companies out there with toxic leadership and whatnot. And we'll get into that when we talk about the growth of your company. But I do want to at least acknowledge that and point that out, that is a big part of success when it comes to growing a business. So let's go back 2 years, right? What made you decide, hey, I'm going to get my own authority and I'm going to do this?
you know, I want to be very transparent, right? Anybody could say, well, yeah, we're doing 25 million. I could sit in front of you and saying, I know everything. When we first started, I didn't know anything about what is an owner operator. I didn't know any of that. So credit goes to Amandeep, right? The gentleman I mentioned, right? Our co-founder and my business partner, because he was a carrier. So at least he understood what it feels like to drive a truck. What's a carrier? He knew all the terminology. He's been in the industry for a long time. He mentioned, hey, Pardeep, you have a very good sales background. Why don't we start a brokerage? So at least I had to start figuring out, okay, what's TMS, what's brokerage, what's a carrier. So we kind of just got into it. We didn't necessarily have a direction. Are we going to, focus on the brokerage? We said, okay, we're going to open the brokerage, and that's an entity that allows us to go and reach out customer. We're also going to start. We had a company called T3RA Freightways where we're going to be buying trucks and adding trucks. So we're thinking we're going to be asset based, and these are terminologies that I know now, obviously, but we didn't have necessarily a sense of direction. We started a brokerage, and I think predominantly Amandeep's idea was we need someone that's sales background, and Pardeep, you have that checked off. Let's get into it. You got to obviously learn the technology, the terminology, and all the acronyms. I remember our first hire was a gentleman named Mario. He we didn't
I
have an
remember
office.
him. Yeah.
You remember him? Yeah, he
Yep.
came to my house and we didn't have an office, and he goes, Pardeep, what TMS are we going to use? And I said, well, what's TMS? If that tells you how much I knew about it, right? And yeah, so I want to give a huge shout out to Amandeep, right? He's been a monumental because his knowledge has been monumental to our success as well, too, right? So for somebody that understands what it feels to sit behind the steering column of a truck and having that type of knowledge has really been monumental for us as well. So yeah, so that's what started the brokerage. We knew we wanted to do something in logistics, didn't necessarily have a direction. Let's start a brokerage and let's start exploring that arena.
So how long did it take you for when you guys made that decision? How long until you would consider yourself fully operational with the brokerage? So you had to wait for the
Authority.
time that it takes to get your authority granted to you, get your MC number, get your tech and tools all in place. What was that ramp up period before you would consider, hey, doors are open?
It was about a month and a half or so. But there's one key element that I remember. We did is we leased an office, right, Ben? I think both of you guys, when you guys were talking to me, we were already in an office. So one of the biggest things that I think, looking back now, I'm connecting the dots together. There has to be a little bit of fire under your rear a little bit. When you rent an office, you're paying a rent. That becomes a little fire. You hire your first employee, you have a payroll. That becomes a fire. You have your electricity bill. Because if you're sitting at home, you don't really have the propulsion to be able to kind of get you to say, hey, I'm going to make some cold calls. I'm going to do this. Now it's looking, okay, every month my bank account is going down because I got to pay all these bills. Well, Pardeep, you better get your act straight, right? So I would say, going back to your answer, about a month and a half from the time, hey, we're going to start this, we had our authority. We immediately leased a small office. I believe we were paying $2,100 for rent. Had our first employee, two employees, Shashant. And Shashant was in accounting, and you remember him. And then
Yep.
Mario was our first. And Mario came from logistics. He understood brokerages better than we did. And we were ready. We were ready to play. We all had the doors open, and we're just sitting around looking at each other and going, "What do we do next?"
You make a good point too. You had that fire under your butt, right? You had to have a sense of urgency. Ben, think back to 2 years ago when we first started. Like people wanted to work with us, they wanted to consume our knowledge or pick our brain and learn from us and whatnot. And there's people like you, Pardeep, that actually took the advice and did the things because you had that sense of urgency. But for every one of you, there was probably two, if not more, that they sat at home. They knew they had to make phone calls, but they weren't actually doing it. We had people that I don't think ever moved a single load that were just trying to learn and trying to start a company, and they'd come on a coaching call, every couple weeks for an hour, and this story was the same every single time. Hey, how's things been going? And they're not doing anything.
Well, it reminds me too, right? Like it's motivation of just genuine being human, right? Like hope of gain, something you want, and fear of loss, right? Fear of loss is far more powerful than hope of gain, right? Everybody wants it. Everybody says they want it. But the reality is when you watch your money diminish or you got an expense you got to cover, there is no way to wiggle around that. You can't justify it. You can't rationalize it in your head. Like people that don't have that push or that risk on the downside, right? I don't make my calls. I'll make a couple more tomorrow. It wasn't that great of a week. It could have been better. I'll do more next week, right? And then the next week and the next week until 2 months passes, they haven't called anybody, right? But when you see that bill every month and you're cutting that check, and like you said, you see your accounts going this way and not this way, it's a hell of a motivator. We used to say when we would hire new people, when I first got into sales, I had a manager that used to like encourage reps to like go shop for cars, go buy something. Like you need some motivation, whatever it is. And if you're just living at your parents' house on their couch and you don't have any motivation to get out of there, it's hard to get motivated to do a difficult job day in and day out. So, I mean, makes a lot of sense when you put it all together.
Yeah, and that could be. It doesn't just have to be a lease payment for your office, right? It could be putting food on the table for your kids. You know what I mean? Paying for a house, a number of things. But yeah, you guys, you did it right. So back to those early days, you start to kind of figure out what is this freight brokering thing? What did it look like? Was it total chaos in your office, just trying to figure out what's what and how, who do I even reach out to find business? How did that all look for you guys?
Yeah, and that's we tried all, and obviously we started, and I think one of the best things that Mario, and I want to give credit where it's due. I remember, if Mario, you listen to this, I'll bet you have a smile on your face. I'll definitely share with Mario. I remember Mario told me, he said, Pardeep, what we need to do is we need to actually look around in a map to see what are some of the companies nearby, Google or this or that. And then also along that line, Mario told me about Freight 360. And he said, hey, there's these two gentlemen that do this podcast, and maybe they have a coaching. Maybe you want to sign up for that, right? So I've known in racing, bodybuilding, whatever other ventures that I've looked into, I understood that there's a very important role of a coach. And then you guys have served that role for us, right? And to anybody who's listening to this, don't think I'm just blowing smoke up, Ben and Nate, but they have been honestly monumental. And Ben, and I think that Nate still serves as a coach. We do one-to-one coaching at least twice a month, if not more, with Nate, and we're going to make that last as long as we can, because that always that 1%. Sometimes you'll say one or two things that make that 1% difference, right? So, and that to me is that. So for anybody who's looking to do this, I would say make sure you have a mentor and you have a coach that can help you along the line. And going back to what you said, I wasn't afraid to try anything and everything. If I heard it from you or I heard it from Mario, it was Google search, looking online, stopping by, making the cold calls, sending the emails, doing whatever it took. I was going to try everything. At that point, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and fire a shotgun. We'll worry about the rifle approach later. And that's what we did.
Two things about that, right? The one on the coaching side, we were talking, Nate and I were on a call with somebody yesterday, and he said, and somebody else that does consulting in our industry, and he said, the one big value, right, is that like as a consultant, you can be honest with a business owner, because as soon as you become an employee or you work with them in that organization, it doesn't work the same way. The opinions are different and the things are aligned differently, right? And I think that is absolutely one of them. I'm curious on the thing you had just said right there, right? Like, so, and again, that's something we talked about on the show and in coaching, right? Like you need a lot of reps to get your feet under you, to feel like your own voice, to understand what sounds right. You need to get a lot of rejections. And to be honest, it makes you uncomfortable, which makes you learn quicker to avoid them and to navigate them, right? Like, and most people aren't willing to put themselves through it long enough to learn to get good to be on the other end, right? So talk a little bit more about the transition from, like you said, shotgun to like the sniper approach, from how long it took you of just the spray and pray approach of just making dials to when you felt like you could really start to navigate a conversation and it was worth looking at specific targets.
Yeah, that's it. So that's a great question. So when I say the shotgun, and when I mentioned that, when I was mentioning a shotgun approach, is that's stopping by somebody's warehouse, getting you ejected. Security guard's not even letting you in. Looking on Google Map and saying, okay, where's the big warehouse? Making the phone calls, the lady in the front or a gentleman in the front that's answering the phone. Right, we all know what I'm talking about. Generally, we'll hang up on you. You don't know what you're talking about. And to me, Benjamin, I'm going to stick to Ben. If I see Benjamin, I'll stick to Ben, right? And those are the reps that you have to put under, right? That to me is just blasting the shotgun pattern. And then it wasn't until, and again, credit goes to Amandeep, and he mentioned the company to me and said, Pardeep, hey, I have a friend that's picking up load from here to here, and it's the XYZ company. It was a cold storage company. I said, well, sure, let me look up the person. And you know what? Thankfully, I found the person, and that's where Nate always talked about. The cold calling to me is a key, but you got to put the reps in. You got to put the reps in. The email to me is more of a secondary. I found the number of that gentleman and I called, and thankfully he picked up, because there were many times I made the cold calls and somebody picked up, and guess what? I was used to them hanging up on me. I was used to getting the voicemail, and when they picked up, I could you not? I didn't have my script ready. I remember a few times when somebody picked up, I hung up because I didn't know what to say. I mean, it's funny. It's funny looking back at it now, but practice, practice to the mirror, practice to your spouse, practice to the employees, practice what you're going to say, because when they do pick up, you better be ready. You better be ready to go. Well, thankfully, the gentleman picked up, and I'll never forget. I kind of stumbled. I said, "Hey, this is Pardeep Singh with T3RA Logistics. We're veteran owned." At that time, I didn't have veteran employees, veteran owned, right? Me. And he said, "Really? What branch?" Just like that.
The
I said,
connection.
"Air Force, sir." He goes, "Where are you stationed at?" I said, "Buell Air Force Base." Next thing you know, rest is history. He happened to live at Buell Air Force Base. His father was a Air Force. And we connected the dots. I asked for a quick meeting. And you know what? I think that the dots lined up. He gave me an opportunity to talk to him and meet with him. And we onboarded, and that started the first load. That was real dedicated first load.
What I want to say right there, right? We talk about this and people joke and we use cliches, or Nate gives me shit about them, right? Like, luck is really where preparation meets opportunity, right? And that is literally what you outlined. There are people listening to this right now going, well, I don't work at the Air Force and I don't have that connection. And that's why that worked. No, it worked because if I had to guess, there were 100 misses, probably a lot more than
A lot
that,
more.
before you got that, right? And if you had to put a number on it, how many of those do you think before you hit that one? Like, just ballpark.
Well over 1,000.
1,000, right? Like 1,000 misses, right? And preparation and practice, so that when you did land on the opportunity, you were prepared. And again, from the outside world, that can be seen as luck, but it's not to the person doing it, because you put the hard work in to create the opportunity when it presented itself. And I think that's just a great example of it.
Yeah, and the other thing too, you don't have to be a military veteran or someone that's in the Air Force Reserves. There are other ways to build rapport and have an overlapping connection with somebody. And we talk about this in different ways. It could be your passion for a certain sport.
It could
or
have been a
hobby of
Bills
yours.
fan. Yeah,
Yeah,
it could have been a Bills fan.
Bills fan.
Let me talk about a second story, and I think you'll know where I'm going with this. We work with a company that manufactures dog food. I'll never forget this. I happened to get the gentleman, director of transportation. I happened to get him on a phone, and I said, "Hey, we specialize in transporting dog food." His answer was very quite funny. He goes, "What is," he said some words in the between. He said, "What is so special about transporting dog food?" And I did not know what to say. And I said, "You know what, sir, you're absolutely right." I said, "But let me tell you something, right?" I said, "We're XYZ. This is what we specialize in. I understand there's nothing." I said, "But we're very dedicated. We're disciplined." And then I brought the military in. And then I had a story to tell. I had a story to tell. We had a lost dog that came into our office. And I told him that story. I said, we took care of that dog. It was a German Shepherd. We fed him. And then we called the kennel, or the people that you call the animal shelter, and saying, hey, this dog needs a home. And I told them the story. And you know what? Him working as a director of transportation at it, and I wasn't making that up. It was a real story. I immediately turned around and sent him a picture of that dog, and that came in, the German Shepherd. And all it did is it broke the ice. It broke the barrier. So it doesn't. I agree, Nate. It doesn't have to be the Air Force, but
It did something else too. It also helped them establish that you and that person had similar values, right? That you don't care about just certain things, that you are that kind of person that does those types of things. And again, we always laugh because everyone goes, the small talk is BS. Those are really just how two human beings are trying to determine, does this person have the same ethics and values that I have? And it just happened to be that random thing got that point across, but it's a great example of it.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
think
and I want to
go ahead.
I want to pick your brain on a couple things about how, as you started to grow, how the hiring and sometimes firing had to come into it. But first, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Lean Solutions Group. Are you looking to take your freight brokerage or agency to the next level? Look no further than Lean Solutions Group. They're industry leaders in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices located in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of exciting positions, including freight broker back office operations, accounting, tech and web development, business development, marketing, customer service, and more. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best in the business. Visit their website at www.leangroup.com. That's LEAN group.com to learn more. So back to you get your first customer, right? And then obviously you talked about the dog food company and you start to grow there. Did you find a need for hiring early on, or did you feel like you got to a point of growth where you're like, oh crap, we should have hired 2 months ago and we didn't? What did that part look like for you?
Great question. You know what? And here's my saying. If your operation team isn't ready for the sale that's about to come or that's in your pipeline, you're already losing the battle.
Yes.
Operation, you could go out and hunt the fish, but somebody's got to be able to take care of that, right? If you're vegetarian, tofu, I guess you can use that, whatever it might be, right? Hey, if you're vegan, soy, or whatever, right? Hey, we live in a world where people eat different things, right? Can't use fish as an example. So your operation team, and here we kind of got a good head level, thinking, okay, 2 people can handle X amount of freight, X amount of loads. Shout out to Director of Operation Ron Steers. He's got that really figured out to the T. That X amount of loads worth X amount, and these amount of lanes are handled by X amount of individuals, right? And so anytime we're getting ready to onboard, and when you onboard a new customer, that customer, very rarely that customer is just going to go, here's everything. They're going to test you out. They're going to run you with 1 or 2 lanes, maybe a few loads. And at that time, you got to that is the time you're going to be able to go from, so let me back up. Anytime you onboard a new customer, the first 1 or 2 or 3% of the business, the maximum business you're ever going to get from that customer are the hardest. To me, that's the hardest. And you better have your aces on that. Your operational aces better be covering that. And once you got that 5% down, after that 5 to almost 80%, I'm talking about no customer is ever going to give you 100% of their freight. And that just doesn't happen. Let's say they give you 60%. You would consider that 60, 100. The first 5 were very hard. From that 6 on to 90 or so, that to me is going to take you a lot less time if you do your first 5% accurately. And that's going to come if you have an A-class operational team. So I would say I put more emphasis in hiring ironclad operation operators.
So were you guys, I mean, you're a small team at first. Were you guys at a point where everyone's wearing multiple hats? And then once you kind of figure out where are we going to bust at the seams here, we need to hire for this task or that task. How did that pan out for you? So like the first hire after that first phase, what was like the biggest need at the time?
Yeah. So we had a gentleman named Mario, and I keep going back to Mario. And I'm telling you, man, when he listens to this, he's going to have a nice smile on his face. So we had Mario, we had an accounting person that was in the office, right? I was doing the cold calling sales. Mario was covering the load that we were bringing in, and accounting was done by this gentleman named Shashant. And we got to a point where I think, it was getting overwhelming. Everybody was doing all kinds of stuff. Shashant was helping. He's in accounting. He's helping cover loads. Mario's covering load. I'm on cab, I'm looking up carrier. So yeah, you better be ready. It's kind of like a person that wants to go buy a restaurant but doesn't know how to cook himself, because when the cook leaves, you better be ready. So you're early on, you need to learn, put me on a phone right now, I could cover a load. Let me make a sales call, I could do that. It's just I had no choice early on that I had to wear multiple hats, and everybody there. And as you start progressing, some people are going to go, some people can't hack the pressure, they're going to take off. But I would say one of the biggest mistakes that Nate I made is that once we started moving some loads, we got excited. Okay, we're thinking this is good enough. I didn't hire. And then Mario had a different, life situation take place. He had to go ahead and leave and walk away from the company. And it was really accounting and me. We were covering the load and we were in a lot of stress. And that's when that was a pinnacle point for us, or a pivotal point, because we could have blown up the account that we had. But if I go back, if I had three people in operation, if one left, I would be okay. So we went through some storming with that customer, our first customer, because we didn't hire adequately in operation. I don't know if that does
That's
that.
that's perfect. I mean, because there's two things here, right? You had a lesson learned about what worked and what didn't work, and then you were able to take that experience, and now you've got a new piece of knowledge in your rucksack as you move forward. So, like, what's your team size at now? You guys are about a dozen, 10 or 12, something like that?
We have about 12 people right here. We have some folks overseas. They're much more of just a data entry. We have about 12 folks here, 8 folks in India.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
And now you've got, clearly, as leadership goes, you've worn all the hats, you've done it all before, and obviously we hope you're not going to have 19 out of 20 people show up sick or call in sick to work one day. But hey, if push comes to shove, Pardeep knows how to handle an invoice, or how to cover a load, or how to handle a possible double broker situation, things that pop up that way. And it's important, right? You can't just start a brokerage and then just try to. I've seen people, the reason I say this is I've seen people as their business model say, I'm going to start a brokerage and go hire sales reps, and they're going to make all my calls for me. And they're just going to bring all this freight, and then I'll hire a bunch of operations people. They'll cover it all. I'm just going to run the business. It's like, well, you can't really run a business or train folks or give them direction if you don't know how to do the job yourself. So I think it's really important to understand that. I think you did things in a smart way, but you learned bumps along the road, what was and what was not working for you and for T3RA. So that's why I like that part of the story.
I think there's
No,
some
100%.
huge takeaways that you just reiterated. The other question I want to ask, like, what are some of the other big lessons learned in your first year? I mean, I know one that we've all kind of discussed off air and were involved in was, just the carrier onboarding, right? When you've got a new brokerage and you've got a new authority. Tell us a little bit about the challenge you faced and how you thought creatively and how you overcame that.
I honestly think that you have really two customers, and this is something you guys preach as well too. Your customers you're getting your freight from is your customer, and ask me any day of the week, and I think my answer may change. And then you have your customers, your carriers. When your load is not being picked up, then your number one customer becomes your carrier, right? Because you're in pain at that point. So that's why I said, ask me a day of the week, and I think I'll tell you which one's more important. I think
Yeah.
today I'll tell you they're both very, very important. One of the biggest struggles you're going to come into as a new broker, you have no score on DAT. No factoring wants to work with you. I mean, God, that is a struggle and a half. That was a huge struggle that we had. And you know what? You just got to put the time in. It's going to take time. So that's why when you start a brand new broker, you're going to hire a bunch of sales. Those guys, sales guys, might have a lot of customers, but how are you going to move their load? So if you treat your carriers just as you would treat your customers, get to know them. They know other carriers. Once you develop a relationship with those carriers, the carriers that they know, they at least trust you that you're going to pay on time. And once you put the mileage and the reps into that, that's going to automatically get your DAT score covered. Get to know some freight uh, factoring companies, because the factoring companies, sorry, it took me a second. I had a brain loss there for a minute. And
All good.
get to know some of the factoring companies, some of the smaller ones that your carriers, the ones that are working. Send them your invoices, build a report with them, build a relationship, have them do reporting on you, because if the carriers don't necessarily do reporting, it's the factoring companies that do the reporting that move the needle up. Again, this is all the stuff that your audience are very familiar with, because you guys are preaching that, and that's the stuff that I learned from you guys.
But I think
Yeah.
Go
I was
ahead,
gonna say
Nate.
we did an episode with Des Clark, who went from playing NFL, pro NFL football to freight brokering, and he had a very similar story where he's getting told no by factoring companies and by trucking companies. But what I thought was great, and I think it's the same with you, and we've seen it with others, is building a relationship can a lot of times bring those black and white barriers down, right? If a factory company just says we have no credit rating on this customer, no days to pay score, we're not going to factor, you can't take loads from them, Mr. Carrier. Well, pick up the phone, human to human, and call them and find out, tell them your story, right? What is it that you need to see from me, or what can I show you that will make you feel more comfortable doing business with me? And it might be, okay, we didn't know that part of the story. We didn't know you had a background with trucking from one of the folks off you start the company. Hey, if you can offer quick pay for the first X amount of loads, that will help us improve your score and visibility when other folks look at you. But you would have never known that had you not picked up the phone and had a conversation to figure out what's important for them. Because obviously it's a risk thing. They want to make sure that they're going to receive payment on behalf of their carrier's invoice from you as a freight broker. So if you don't have that conversation and figure out what it is that they need to see to feel comfortable, you'll never progress.
Yeah.
So just something.
One other thing I want to point out. Go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
No, I was just going to reiterate something else you said. Like, there's always this contentious relationship on the carrier side versus brokers, right? But again, I think good brokers, right, that are in this for the long haul, like for the long term, right, or vested in wanting to have a career in it, that's the product we're selling, right? Like, you are literally selling the services of your carriers. And if you aren't going to build relationships with them, what are you selling, right? You're just selling transactions at that point, which means you've got no strategic advantage. You've got no ability to find effectiveness within lanes and matching them up and helping a carrier get where they need to, which allows you to find win-win-win situations. Like, it really does start there. And again, yes, you've got to get customers to have the freight to move first. So theoretically, that's kind of point one, but you can't ever complete the work that you're offering without the carrier. So like, you can't even do the job without those relationships. And again, like, if you were really going to build a career in this industry, you need to do exactly what you outlined, which is building strategic relationships with carriers that you can utilize over and over again. So you can speak from experience when you tell a new customer, this is a reliable carrier. I've been working with them for years. I know them and I know the kind of service they're going to provide you, because everybody can say that. And that's, again, why lots of brokers that are in the revolving door of our industry come in and go right back out, because they don't pay attention to these things, use transactional carriers, and they don't do what they thought they were going to do. And they end up not able to save face, and they lose the customers they work so hard to get anyway.
100%, 100%. And I think as we progress through to our podcast, right, our recording, I want to focus a lot on relationship, because relationship, you learn that word inside out, left, right, sideways. This industry revolves around relationship. In every single aspect of the game, there's relationship with your customers, with the people they're sitting here in operations, your sales, your carriers. Everything evolves around that.
It's a people
Right?
business.
It's a people business. And there's one more thing along the line. One of the biggest challenges we ran into, Nate, early on, other than just covering the freight, is cash flow.
It's a
How
big
did you
one.
overcome that? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's a big
talk
part
about
of
it.
it.
So if there's a thought, I'm going to sit on my kitchen counter, I'm going to go ahead and start this thing. Hey, more power to you. But these are the things that I think somebody needs to think about. Generally, rule of thumb, your customers are going to pay you in 45 days. You onboard a larger customer, they have their terms. But now you're running into where carriers want a half up front. They'll work with you. They want half up front. Or they don't, or whatever the case is, or they want 21-day terms. So now you have a major cash flow. And I think anybody who's wanting to get into this business, right, make sure you're walking into it with a decent cash in your bank account. Otherwise, nothing is worse than ruining a relationship with a carrier, not paying them on time, because that will travel far faster. It will travel really quick and much faster than the good deeds you do. And that is not
Yeah.
a situation you want to run into. And the biggest thing is, Nate, and how did I overcome that? Pardeep's bank account.
Well, what's good is people oftentimes they don't think that we're a bank. Freight brokers, we are a bank. We fund the transaction, and like you said, 45 days until you get paid by your customer. And on average, you might be paying a truck in 15, 20 days if they want quick pays and different terms. And what they'll do if they don't have funds up front, they'll use a factoring company, and they oftentimes might end up with a high fee, a very expensive factoring company, and they don't learn the the difficulty of managing cash flow because a factoring company does it for them, and they never get out of that factoring company uh, style of doing business, and you're just throwing profit out the door if you're going to use a factoring company. It is a necessary evil for some folks when they start off that they don't have the funds to do it. But if you can cash flow your own business and grow at the speed of cash, you're going to every single possible penny of profit you will get. You're not giving anybody else any money for fees or you name it when it comes to them assisting you in that.
I
So
mean, quick
that's
quick
awesome.
pay is a revenue stream for you. It is for us.
Yep.
Every
Yep.
time a carrier wants a quick pay, I'm thinking ka-ching, ka-ching,
Yep.
right? So
3% fee, 5% fee, whatever it
whatever
is,
it
right?
might
Or a
be.
flat fee. It is exactly
Yeah.
an additional profit line on them, but you can only afford to do that
If
if
you
you have
have
a cash position.
Yeah, and today every Wednesday lunch is brought in for the entire team. And today is Wednesday. I think they're probably eating Chipotle right now. And that all that lunch, whatnot. Hey, carriers, thank you for taking quick pay because you're paying for that.
There you go. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yep.
Very true. So I wanted on the note of carriers, and you did mention that they're essentially another customer of ours. I want to ask you a couple of things about your process that and for me working with you for as long as I have, I know this about your company, and I wish more companies did this. Is that when you guys want to cover a load for your customers, you don't just post it on DAT and pray that somebody calls you with a truck, right? You have a network of preferred carriers. They might be folks that have run that lane before, but they've done some sort of business with you. And I think it's really important. So, can you just talk through briefly how did you come about developing that network? What are some of the things you look for to call somebody a quality or preferred carrier of yours?
Great question. I think if I could tell you a perfect carrier rep that I would be hiring, that carrier rep, to me, if you're a carrier rep, if you're hiring a person that just simply says, when a load comes, I'll post it on DAT and cover it, that to me, we don't hire that mentality. A carrier rep has the same same mindset as a sales rep. So not only they're thinking about how do I cover this, but they're asking a lot more questions to that carrier. They're asking questions. Okay, so you're covering this lane. What other lanes do you run? What areas? Where are you hauling from? They're asking all these questions and getting to know and building what? A relationship.
Yep.
Where's your backhaul? How are you covering your backhauls? What kind of material are you hauling from Reno? They're asking these questions. They're inputting the notes in. So next time there's all of a sudden a Reno lane that I throw over to a team, they're like, hey, we got it. Oh, that particular carrier, they're doing that. And now they've even taken a step far, right? Obviously, there's plenty of tools that can help you with that. They've categorized their carriers. This Sacramento to Reno, I have 5 of these. These guys go from Reno to Illinois, and that they started categorizing them. So now to them, man, it's like it's crazy. You throw a load at them, they go done, just like that. It's all a relationship, and that's the mindset that the folks that we have in carrier ops, they're a relationship mindset. They're not, I'm just going to cover out of the way. And sometimes in order to build that relationship, you have to give a little bit of money. You have to ask them if they got a decent sized fleet. You know what? They're not afraid to say, hey, what's your schedule looking like? Where are you based out of? Can we come meet you? Again, back to relationship.
And I want to add something too, right? That is not just valuable in coverage and margins and effectiveness in that side of the business. Because once you have those are the nuggets that you can use on the sales side that are real, right? When you're a sales rep and you can get on the phone with a customer in, I don't know, Sparks, Nevada, and go, I got 8 carriers that are coming into your zip code every week. I got 3 guys on Tuesdays, 4 that are on Fridays, couple times on Mondays and Thursdays. I don't know if these would be a fit for what you're moving, but I got guys that I know are looking to be heading in various directions. Those are the things, those are hot buttons for shippers that allow you to have a better conversation about their needs. Because when you just call them and go, what do you need help with? Everybody can ask that. And they're like, well, you're just going to put my loads on a board anyway, and anybody can do that anyway. But if you
That's
call
right.
them with that solution kind of as your offer, it opens up so many more doors. Like those are the little nuggets that I think actually make you more effective at the other side of the job as well.
I remember having a conversation with Nate, and coming from a technology background, my brain's always thinking APIs and this and that, and data driven. And I think I mentioned early on that we're very data driven. When I say we're data driven, we do a lot of analysis to figure out, okay, we're taking loads from this direction, we're head hauling to this, and this is what we're making, this is our margin, and this is what the customers are paying. So if the customer is paying this, then our sales team can take that information and now sit with any customer that is head hauling where our carriers are back hauling. What does that allow me to do? That allows me to create a value for my carriers, allows me to get better margins. And guess what? Now it allows me to have a very candid conversation with the sale or with the customer who I'm prospecting and saying, Mr. Customer, I could tell you that we have X amount of trucks. We're KPI driven. We will be on time because our trucks are here at this time. And when price, to me, we don't really talk about price right out of the gate, but I know internally that we're going to be very competitive. Why? Because now it's a round trip. So now I have a happy carrier, easy to cover. I have a customer that's much more inclined to work with us because we've done the analytics. You got to look at your data because data will start telling you a lot of things. And I was telling Nate that I wanted to create some little app based around that. There's a lot of tools that are already available. So before you start becoming Pardeep and thinking that I want to create something new, make sure you search the landscape and make sure, double check that it's not there. The tools are already there.
Yeah, so that's a really good point because the whole post and pray method, anybody can sling a truck and sling a load that way, but to truly be a logistician and be an extension of your customer's supply chain, that is what is the value add as us as a freight broker to our shippers and to our carriers as well. We're called an intermediary for a reason. We're not just working for the shipper, or we're not just helping out the carrier. We are the middleman. We are the broker between both of those parties, and it's our job to do that with excellence and to provide service and value to both sides of the transaction.
Nate, real quick, we
Yes.
lost 160,000 exactly, $160,000 gross business a month because we didn't do what you just said. Early on, we had a lane from Indiana coming back to Sacramento. We got the lane, we had no carriers. Right out of the gate, the guy gives us 10 loads and we blew him. Got a second opportunity, blew him. Guess what? Those are doors closed permanently. They're done.
Those are some of the stinging mistakes that you will never forget
For
the
never.
rest of your career. And I wanted to ask you, so we're getting towards the end of the conversation here, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk through any of just the great success stories you guys have had, any lessons learned, really just anything that sticks out to you that would be beneficial for anybody else that's getting started or is fairly newer in brokerage that you learned along the way. Obviously, everyone's got to make their own mistakes and have their own learning moments, but it always helps and it's amplified if they can learn from somebody else's wins and losses as well. So what are some of those for you?
Thank you. And I think that's a great, we're heading towards the ending here. So I sat with the team yesterday and I knew I was doing this podcast. And I sat with the entire team and I said, guys, we're doing this podcast. What are some of the success stories? What do you think makes T3RA a place that you enjoy coming to work? Everybody here has belief. They have belief in themselves. They have belief in the person right and left of them, and they have belief in leadership. They're very committed. We have a family-like environment. They laugh, they joke, they have their own group messages, they share stories. Again, they like coming into work. And I mentioned servant leader. All the leaders, myself, Amandeep, our co-founder, everybody here, they're a servant leader. I'm going to move the snow out of your way so you could sprint the fastest, right? I'm on the floor. I'm listening to them. I don't just lock myself up in the office and just sit here. So I think the culture, the environment, and how people operate is very, very important because if that belief is what allows them to take some hard lanes. They have a belief that if I run into challenges, the guy on the right side is going to stop what he's doing. He's going to come and he's going to help me out. That belief is what I have. That belief is what sales team have to be able to go and talk to a difficult customers. And the other thing is, when that difficult customer calls you, be ready to listen to them. Don't pass the phone to your operation team. Don't be ready to support them, because those conversations are going to come in, right? So, and I keep going back to relationships, the commitments, a family type environment. I think have those. If you're somebody that's starting this, have those. Those are the components that you're going to have to distill in yourself first, and you're going to have to distill in the team that you're about to bring in, and make sure those are the people you're hiring, the people that have that. It's easy to train somebody. Actually, Nate, I don't know if you knew that or not. Vast majority of the folks that work in operations don't come from logistics background. They do not have any logistic background except for one, but they have culture. They have belief. They're very strong. They have commitment. Veterans, why do I hire veterans? They're disciplined. They show up on time. They're very committed. They don't give up. They don't just run.
You can teach anybody logistics, but you can't always teach somebody leadership or selfless service, integrity, right?
I would
No.
Discipline.
I would say I don't know that you can ever teach that, right? Like, to be honest, like, and even if you can teach it, to instill it somebody, that is even in their 20s and 30s, is very difficult and very time consuming. There's a famous quote, I think it's from Charlie Munger. He basically said, and this is from the investment side. He's like, if there is something wrong with a culture, with a company, it makes more sense to shutter the entire company and start over than to try to change the culture, because it is that difficult, right?
Yeah,
And if
that's
you
right.
can do that right from step one, like, you are so far and is an advantage against any of your peers, because it matters. It's how your company functions. It's how everybody interacts with each other. And it is literally the foundation of how you're going to service both sides of the business, whether it's the carriers or the customers, right? And that's the stuff that is really the foundation of the relationships, which is the stickiness of the industry. The contracts don't mean anything. What matters is that we do what we say we're going to do, and we do that over, even when it's difficult, right? And it's very hard to teach that to somebody that doesn't bring that to the table out of the gate.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Pardeep, any last tips or thoughts that you want to share with anybody in the audience listening on your story?
And I think everybody's, so far, if you've been listening, you kind of got the theme, at least the so far, is the relationship. Relationship is a theme that I latch onto. This business, especially in 2023, right now, there are more trucks than freight. The only thing that's going to make you survive is a relationship that you have with your existing customers, because those existing customers, those directors, those managers, they know somebody, and that relationship is going to get you your foot in the door. The cold calling, the cold emails, they're effective, but nothing is more effective than maintaining a strong relationship and building off of that relationship. And that goes to your carriers too. Your carriers, when they're not hauling freight for you, they're hauling freight for somebody else. They're not sitting empty. And having a relationship, they'll let you know, hey, I'm hauling empty cans from so and so. That gives you at least an understanding. So when you're when you're cold calling that customer, that this is their business, this is where they're hauling, this, at least have that element, so that way you have a story to tell, and you're positioning yourself. Simply picking up the phone and introducing yourself, and at least in 2023, it ain't working, right? So keep going back to it. Be relationship driven, have that mindset in yourself, and have the team be in that mindset.
Well, you're right. Carriers are, I mean, for two military guys, they're your boots on the ground. They're the ones kicking doors in. They're the ones talking to the literally the guys in the warehouse. They're talking to the people you're cold calling. They know what's going on. They know who's having issues. They know whose freight nobody wants to pick up and whose freight everybody wants to pick up. And
Yeah.
who are the companies that the drivers want to work for, and they know the ones that they don't. And those are great leads into what's happening before you even pick up the phone.
And one more thing real quick. So I came from a large corporate. Like I mentioned, like I was an account manager and an IT background. There's things that I brought, at least that I hear from folks, that when I do it, QBR and monthly business review and quarterly business review. I think those terms maybe, I don't know. I've had people tell me that they didn't exist, and I don't know if you're making it up. I'm not making it up. That's what we do in the IT sector. We have QBR with our large customers. When I say QBRs, I'm talking about being able to take KPI, being able to take data, because a lot of customers don't do that. Being able to showcase, hey, you sent us X amount of loads. Here's what we have done for you. Here's when we were on time. Here's when we had problems, but also hold them accountable. I always tell them our success story. Mr. Customer, you threw a load at us at 5 p.m. and you asked us to cover at 8 p.m. because somebody else dropped.
Mhm.
Be okay highlighting yourself and saying, this is when we helped you. And also be okay with telling them, hey, you're paying us way too much attention. I think if you reduce the hours by this and this, or we shift from here to here, now you're building partnerships. And those are all
Yep.
the conversations that you're going to have at what I call QBRs. We do quarterly business reviews with our customers because that is the only place that I can show them that I'm a true partner. Somebody said, somebody, and I can't mention his name, but I'll definitely, I think when he listens to it, he'll know who I'm talking about. Somebody said something to me. Your job is not to move my freight. Your job is to make me look good in front of the entire corporation.
That's
That,
huge.
God, I'm going to say that I lashed onto and I live by that. Here, everybody lives by that. That is your job. That's it.
It's so funny, right? Two things you said today that happened to me yesterday and a follow-up today. Picked up a customer that had something in common with a college I went to. And today, and it was somebody new in the industry, and I was outlining what we really do as brokers. And like 6 months into the job, and I was like, look, I said it almost verbatim. I was like, literally, my job is to make you look good to everybody inside. My job is you tell me what you need help. The more information you give me, the more I can be helpful going to the market and finding the relationships that are going to help solve your problems, because I know you don't have time to call as many people as I do, right? I'm just here to help you look good and help you get your bonuses,
That's right.
because that's really it, right? Bring solutions. Don't sit there and ask what they need to help you with. Think about what it is they're talking about and bring things creatively, whether it's in quarterly or annual or on your week to week conversations, right? Keep thinking for ways that you can actually add value outside of, I can get you a truck and get this moved for your rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And maybe that director wants to move to the VP of transportation. Well, you could really help that director move to the VP of transportation. And same thing in your team. Maybe the first person that's a carrier rep wants to move to a manager role. Be open to having those conversations. Be people driven, right?
Absolutely. Well, good conversation. Pardeep Singh, CEO and founder of T3RA Logistics. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for how folks can reach you. What's the website for T3RA?
T3RAlogistics.com.
Awesome. And hey, if you guys want to hear more from Pardeep, make sure to check out the Final Mile podcast, where Freight 360 answers your questions that you send to us every single week. You'll be able to hear Pardeep join us on that on Tuesday. Ben, any final thoughts?
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills.